It's okay to fanboy, right? It's a little bit fanboy, yeah. I got to talk to Arianna Huffington, which for me was one of those like crazy moments. And I loved the conversation we had. She does not sort of waste time or energy. She goes straight into it. And I think for any author, there's something really inspiring about her story. Not only because we hear about her story sort of before, and then after. And really the moment in the middle was where she started to realize that she needed to be more of a healthy way that she could be a creator and a creative. And I think that in particular for any of us who are creating, who are writing, who want to put work out in the world, there is this sense of balance that we certainly need. And I think Arianna is one that we could all learn from. In this conversation, there's sort of a couple things that I thought were really the good takeaways for you. The first one is I think, writing is this process of really just getting words down. And so when you're writing a book, certainly you're writing for the book, but even when you're not, use tools like daily writing, journaling. Julia Cameron in The Artist's Way talks about sort of morning papers. Whatever it is you need to do to keep that act going is great. And even if you're not writing a book, but you're writing, that is helping you continue to process those things. I think the other thing that's important to know is also like, you need to understand this importance of when you have this creative pursuit to recharge. You want to take those times to give yourself that gap. So if you're in a big push, even meaning just taking a walk, taking a break along the way can really be powerful. Be intentional that there's no points for kind of there's no points for this process of like doing it hard and making it challenging on yourself. Use those pieces and places. And then lastly, remember that there are ways and tools to make yourself more efficient as a creator. I think modern authors think about books differently, whether it's using transcriptions, whether it's using things like AI, all kinds of things can be helpful for us. So remember, just because it's been done a certain way doesn't mean you need to do it that way. Modern authors find ways to get jobs done more efficiently, particularly as you're writing and creating this book. So enjoy the conversation with Arianna. For me, it was one of those ones that I was furiously writing notes as I watched this again. If you enjoy conversations like this, please make sure you subscribe. And that way you can get these updates from modern authors and see these conversations every week that we're doing. Enjoy the conversation. You'll learn a lot. It's a lot that we jam-packed into a short time.
If you're not willing to be vulnerable and open, you shouldn't write a book that includes your life, because it shows. You can write books that don't involve your life, but there's only one way to write about your life, and that's to be willing to be raw and vulnerable, and not to try and be perfect. I would love to know, how did you collect these 400 people?
Writing a book is one of those things, it's very lonely. And so I think when people started to say, hey, we could do this together, this is where this community has been built. So it's, hey, you should meet my friend and my sister and my cousin. And next thing you know, we got this amazing community of people from all over the world. About half of the folks are doing sort of creative works, fiction, memoirs, and half of the folks are doing nonfiction. And we get together every week and hang out together.
And everybody also has a job or is in college. What's the situation?
Yep. We got people who are either full-time students in graduate school or undergraduate, or people who are working full-time. So the book is that passion project that lives on the side that's important for them to kind of do. And some have all of those: book, school, life, family, all those things in one fell swoop.
I love it. Congratulations to you and everyone for putting so much energy into their passion project.
I agree. Well, so I thought I'd start with a conversation, ask you, you are someone who's clearly, in some ways, like your entire sort of career has been the love of writing here. Like, how have you, how did you develop this passion for writing? Because with your own writing and celebrating others, why is writing so important to you?
I just love kind of moving hearts and minds. When I started, frankly, I didn't think I would end up writing 15 books. Now, what I love as a mother is that my youngest daughter just published her first book as an Audible original.
That's amazing.
So I love the sort of continuation of the tradition. And what was interesting, in these times when people are talking a lot about resilience and how do we navigate these difficult times, she wrote the book. She's an artist. She's a visual artist. she started writing this for herself, as many people do,
Yep.
like keeping a journal to help her sort out through this very hard experience of being hit by a bike in the streets of New York and suffering from debilitating headaches for 3 years. And she started writing it to help herself and not to despair.
Mm-hmm.
And in the course of writing it, it became like a spiritual journey where she started coming to terms with the universe, with her own voice.
Yeah.
Is everything arbitrary? What's this about? And anyway, Audible published it under the title Map to the Unknown. And it's been amazing, the response, because a lot of people, even though it's her own story, she wrote it in a very funny way. Because again, finding the humor in the darkness often helps us.
Right.
And it also makes an interesting writing style because it's not like too heavy. And the truth is that life is a mixture, right?
Right.
Of the dark and the light.
Yeah. You need
So anyway, it's been interesting going on this journey with her.
It's true. Apple doesn't fall very far. I have little kids, so I'm hoping one day my daughters will decide to write books. And so, it's a new experience. So for you, like, I always love to hear the process that people go through of deciding to write a book. Because as you know, like you've written 15 of them and they're diverse all across the board. How do you decide that you're going to invest this chunk of your life in a topic? Is there a process you go through, or is it just emotional striking you?
Every one of my books has been different. The last two were very personal.
Right.
Like I collapsed from exhaustion and burnout in 2007 and started studying the whole phenomenon of burnout, covering a lot of it in the Huffington Post that I was running at the time. Right. And then I started wanting to write about it. So that's how Thrive came about. It was really my new passion. And then after Thrive the book came Thrive the company. And I left the Huffington Post in 2016 to found my new company to end the stress and burnout epidemic. And now, with the pandemic, of course, these issues have become much more central. Right. Because people are recognizing that if they don't take care of themselves and they burn out, the mental health consequences, the physical consequences are much harder during a pandemic.
And you've seen your daughter going through the book. You've gone through it. What is, this group here it's a stressful process, right? To go through it. You talk a lot about balancing wellness and all these pieces, the three legs of the stool. How do you encourage an author or a creator who's doing something important and personal to sort of find that balance when they're doing something that's both hard, but also really important to them?
I don't think it's a balance. I actually don't use the word balance because the truth is that, if you are in the flurry of creativity and you end up writing all night,
yes,
fine. Just make sure you take time to recharge.
Yeah.
And make sure you are not operating with diminishing returns.
The line that the best way to clean the house is to start writing your book is that's the best way to clean the house.
Some people can only write on their laptop. Barack Obama wrote his whole latest book on a yellow pad. I have started with my last two books dictating into a tape recorder because I realized that I actually can speak for an hour or more without notes. So I thought, why not use that? Create a first draft. And once you have a first draft, it's so much easier to sit down and edit.
The goal here is we tell people the mediocre first draft, and even lower than mediocre is okay because it gets better certainly as it goes. When you're going through the process, do you have someone who's with you? Like, do you kind of have a collaborator or an editor? Like, what's your process of like kind of building the idea part of this out?
It's a pretty lonely profession. I love music. I love classical music. I often, I wrote one of my books to all of Haydn's over 100 symphonies. And that was before Spotify. And so I find that having tea, I love sort of certain things that keep me going. I always have candles on my desk. I try to remember to blow them out before So these are sort of things that help me stay focused, avoiding distractions.
Yes.
Especially now with social media and the desire to want to consume coronavirus news. One of the things I always do when I'm writing, which is most of the time because I'm not writing a book now, but I'm writing articles, etc., is right. I have put an end to all notifications coming to my phone. If I want to get the news, I go get the news. Being interrupted is the worst thing for a writer.
Yep.
You need that uninterrupted time to come up with even your first draft.
The first session we did together is all about the science of distraction and traction. You have to prepare to do something great. You've gone through this journey of like writing a book years ago to today. Do you see the process changing, how technology has helped you, hindered you, or how have you seen that evolution as a writer and author?
For myself and for so many writers I talk to, the distractions of technology, the addictive nature of social media is something that we need to be very relentless about.
In your book, you do share a lot of these powerful moments and things. How do you balance that fear and that sort of openness and willingness to kind of be vulnerable and authentic? How do you get to that point where you're willing to share some of these inside stories?
I think if you're not willing to be vulnerable and open, you shouldn't write a book that includes your life. Because it shows. You can write books that don't involve your life. But there's only one way to write about your life, and that's to be willing to be raw and vulnerable, not to try and be perfect. I would love to invite everybody writing to share their stories on Thrive Global. We have about 36 million users across all our platforms. If there's a book that you could use research for, you can invite people to share their stories. You own all the rights. We've created a system where anything that appears on Thrive is owned by the writer. We don't care about exclusivity. You can post it wherever you want. Send it to me, ah@thriveglobal.com, or to our editor, Rebecca @thriveglobal.com. And we would love to invite you to share your stories. Eric,